Well, the West Asia crisis, in fact, has brought in a key issue on the energy security of the world. But our minister, in fact, Hardeep Singh Puri, said that there is no reason to worry to discuss this big story. We have Narendra Taneja, energy expert, and we have Mitali Nikore. She's the founder and economist, Nikore Associates. Thank you so much for joining us today on ET Now. Quickly, Mr. Taneja, on Sunday, Prime Minister Modi appealed to the people of the country to shift and reduce the travel as much as possible, to work from home, so that, there is no crisis going forward. Today, Hardeep Singh Puri, within 48 hours of that appeal, and in fact, there was another appeal made by PM just yesterday in another city, again appealing to, several measures, 7-point measures to ensure energy security, and several other things discussed there. But how do you read Hardeep Singh Puri's reaction, to the question raised on energy security? And he, in fact, assures that India has 60 days of crude. Is that enough?
Well, you see, he's a minister, and it's important that you don't press the panic button. Earlier, Petroleum Secretary has said the same thing, there's no need to panic. And my own assessment is there is no need to panic. So what the minister is basically trying to do is to reassure that no worry on the supply side as for sourcing, refining, processing, distributing oil is concerned. And I think there is a lot of truth in it, because if you look at the reality, we haven't really faced the kind of any supply disruption in oil so far. But globally, the situation is tight, no doubt about it. Since we are a large consumer of oil, we are the third largest consumer of oil in the world. We are the second largest importer of oil in the world. So we do enjoy a kind of a special relationship with majority of oil exporters in Africa, Latin America, the US, and the Gulf area as well. Having said that, at the same time, the major issue is not so much the physical supply, is the economics, the price. The real challenge for India and for China, for Japan, for majority of other countries in Asian region is the price, because the economics has become so difficult now. When you look at the price of oil or whatever you read, let's say on the television screen of ET Now, the fact is that when it comes to the real price, that the basket price that you really pay, that's higher than what you see on the screen. So China is paying or India is paying. So that's the challenge, is economics. Challenge is the prices are going up.
Challenges. Economics rightly pointed out. Yes, absolutely. So let's get Mitali Nikore's reaction to that. How long can India realistically keep a tap on the retail fuel prices or the retail fuel prices steady before, the OMCs see a big impact?
So thanks a lot for having me in the discussion. Very honestly, when we look at the current scenario, the government is footing a bill of nearly 1,400 crores per day, for keeping the retail prices down. I mean, at the end of the day, last year, yes, one can argue that the oil marketing companies did make some profits. But if you look at the budget statements that are there, which were released in February, that profit was approximately 30 to 40,000 crores for the year. And currently, the government is actually footing the bill of 1,400 crores per day. So very honestly, in my estimation, and we've done some number crunching here at Nikore Associates, we find that after 6 months, it will start to really creep up in terms of the fiscal deficit impact, because at this point in time, say if the fiscal deficit even goes up to 5 or 5.5% in about 6 months' time, if we continue with this, that is worth it because it keeps a lid on inflation. But if the scenario calls for it in about 6 months' time, definitely it will become, incumbent on the government to raise prices. Another option is that the government goes for a calibrated price increase. So say you increase it by 1 rupee or 1.5 rupee per liter now, or you increase diesel by say 4 or 5 rupees now. And then over time, you start to bring in smaller and smaller incremental changes. So I think that's another approach that the government could go for. But at some point, if this crisis drags on, it will become incumbent upon the government to, to raise prices at some point. I'm not saying that that point has to come today or this week.
Right. Mr. Taneja, also as you know, coming back to PM Modi's appeal over the weekend on some of the energy-saving measures. Now, countries like Pakistan, Sri Lanka already have introduced some of these measures. In fact, even in Europe, the likes of Germany and all, like they have tried to do something around the fuel and the fuel prices. So what are some of these measures and how effective will they be in ensuring that there is enough fuel and we don't have to pay too much for our petrol and diesel going forward?
Well, I think, first of all, we can't compare ourselves with Pakistan. Is in a very different situation. We are kind of probably are more resilient, and moreover, let's not forget, oil is the backbone of Indian economy, for that matter, the global economy. So if you really go for any drastic measures in order to, go for demand destruction, but that would have a negative impact on the overall growth. And, small industries and small retail places and these periwalas and other places. So that's not really a kind of an option which is so open to us. The important thing for us to look at these companies we import roughly 89% our total requirement from 42 different countries. And these companies are responsible for bringing that oil into India to buy it from wherever, then ship it, then bring it, refine it, process it, distribute it, retail it. It's a huge challenge. And we have to make sure that these companies, more particularly the government of India's companies such as Indian Oil, Bharat Petroleum, Hindustan Petroleum, and a few others, that they are financially in a good shape so that they have that strength which is needed for them to go out and negotiate better price and also to better terms and conditions. So therefore, it is important that the financial health of these companies is something that nobody challenges globally. And we will need to do something for it. Either the government of India chip in, or they allow them to raise the price of petrol, diesel, and other, such products. So therefore, the big challenge is, can you really afford the very same companies which are responsible for India's energy security, for bringing oil from, all parts of the world and make it available to consumer, north to south, east to west? If their financial health gets compromised, how are they going to do their job? So
Right.
that's the question that government is faced with. That's the question economy is faced with. That's the question
Right.
consumer at the end of the day must also be faced with.
Right. Very crucial and critical points raised, Mr. Taneja. The other day I had an expert on the show who said that, this is not a matter of 6 months, the next 6 months and the impact over the next 6 months. To fix this oil and energy crisis and the impact on the oil and crude market, it's going to take several years, maybe 6 to 7 years. Your thoughts on that?
Very important question. You see, the point is that it's good to talk about green energy transition, wonderful. These are good to talk with, let's say, in seminars and five-star hotel rooms. The question is that, there is no substitute to oil and gas and coal for India for next 25 years. We have done very well in terms of renewables, but renewables are only supplementing fossil fuels. They're not replacing them. And don't forget, we still have 700 million energy poor in this country. They don't have access to affordable or sufficient amount of energy, and we live in a democratic country. How long you can deny them? You say we in big cities can afford 4 air condition, but you're not allowed to have even a refrigerator. So it won't go on for too long. So therefore, it's important to keep us in mind that we have basically, and if we need to grow that 9% per annum. Look what China has gone, and China is going there. So therefore, it's important. We need more oil, we need more gas, we need more coal. We also need renewable energy more. We have done very well, but we need all sources of energy. So we don't have this luxury like they have in Germany or in Sweden and Norway, that they can say, all right, no to fossil fuel, but only green. We can't afford that. If that is the situation, then these companies need to be strong. Then it's important that we actually hunt for more oil and gas in our own bases and go abroad wherever possible. So energy security for us is a very important part. There is no economic security without energy security, and there is no national security without economic security. So in fact, energy security at the very core of every single debate we have on economy or on national security.
Right, right. Absolutely. Amazing point made, Mr. Taneja. Mitali Nikore, your thoughts also, with the increase, and since you mentioned like a staggered approach in increasing the price of fuel and diesel, but that also increases the transportation cost. And then we have inflation, food inflation staring at us in the face. So how soon do we see that happening? And, because so far, many of the organizations have not passed on, this burden to the consumers. But how soon do you see that happening?
So thanks. I just wanted to comment on one thing that Sir said before I answer your question around renewable energy. See, it's very simple to think about. Okay, we can't survive without oil, but very honestly, when we look at a few countries in the global south, I've done a lot of work in Africa, I've done a lot of work in Latin America. We see independent power producers thriving in some of these countries. We need a stronger regulatory mechanism to actually activate our renewable energy markets. And it's also very, very critical to say that, now the time has come for that transition. We cannot go on saying that, okay, things have been going as they are, the status quo is maintained. We need a big thrust on electric vehicles. We need a big thrust on solar energy. We need a big thrust on wind energy. These are two or three very established renewable energy technologies. And in fact, if you look at China's, entire growth story, it is predicated on constantly investing in renewable energy. And today, China invests more in renewable energy than most of the global south combined. So very honestly, I feel like our transition from here on, we have a inflection point today, and we can actually transition towards cleaner fuels and more and less dependence on other economies. Now,
Right, right.
having said that, coming to your question on,
Right, right. Mr.
sorry,
Taneja, you
that's
wanted to
fine.
add something.
Just want to say one thing. You see, it's important to have, first of all, as I said, let's not be unnecessarily touchy about this. Renewable energy, we need more of renewable energy. But if we think that renewable can replace fossil fuel, then we are living in a, I'm sorry to say, but fool's paradise. In China, they've done very well in electric vehicles. But do you know how do electric vehicles run there? On coal. These are coal fired electric vehicles. Remember that. So therefore, nobody is saying it's important to have the holistic discussion on that. We need more solar. We need to do maximum more. We need to go for energy transition more aggressively than what we have done. However, that should not come at the cost of oil, not at the cost of fossil fuel. Because for our economy, we need all sources of energy and we need more oil, more gas, more coal. Unless we think there's 70 crore people who live below energy poverty, they are not Indians. They can live the way they want. And we in the big cities and the big halls of five-star, research and five-star seminar rooms, we can only, because the West talks about it. Let the West talk. We are not the West. We are not Africa. We are in a very name one economy of India's size, one economy which is more dependent on imports for energy than India. We are most vulnerable. Let's don't get into the Western narratives that green energy is everything. It is everything.
How
but
LPG crisis
our situation
brought
is
the
different.
country to the knees
Our
with.
conditions are different.
Right. Right, right. Mitali, I think you're on mute.
No, my audio is on. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, I was saying that I agree with Sir's point that, it's not about replacement, it is about complementarity. But I also want to respectfully disagree and say that renewable energy is not a Western narrative. Renewable energy should be the narrative of the global South. Taking the lead in renewable energy has been Prime Minister Modi's personal agenda since he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat. I have been to the solar farms that have been set up in rural Gujarat by the Chief Minister. It was one of the first solar farms set up in the country, and it has provided livelihood to so many people, electricity to so many villages. So, very honestly, to say that this is an import of the West, that would be
I'm talking
incorrect.
Apple. You're talking. No, no. I'm not talking. I'm talking to. I don't disagree with you, but that's not the point. You see, look at when President Biden was the president of America. He was the one who basically started demonizing fossil fuel and talked about renewable. Entire world was forced to talk about it. Do you know that? The important point is what you're saying. I agree with you 200%. What I'm saying is, but at the same time, we need Indian solutions. And you are absolutely
Sir,
right
I
when you
think we
talk
agree
about
on
renewable.
that totally,
Listen,
that we
let me
need
complete.
Indian
Madam, let me
solutions.
complete. Let me complete. You see, the point is that look at the whole globe. Look at where we are. Look at our needs. There are 4 billion energy poor on the planet. 4 billion. What I'm saying is, if we have to eradicate energy poverty right now in the global south, I want to focus more in India. We need every single source of energy. And
Right.
at the same, there are
We
areas
need
where
every single source of energy to
renewable
continue
energy
the
is
way
mostly
in which we
electricity, but
are.
it's not the only electricity.
Right.
Are you going to run military trucks and aeroplanes on just on electricity? We are not there yet. We'll get there. But in the meantime, for next 25 years, we need more renewable energy. I agree with you, madam, 200%. But if you think only renewable, I disagree with you 1 million times. Wake up, smell
Right.
coffee, check the reality.
Right. All right. Mitali Nikore and Mr. Taneja for joining us today on ET Now. Due to paucity of time, unfortunately, I'll have to wrap up this conversation, but it was lovely having you both on the show.
Thank you very much.
Well, with that, it's time for us to slip into a very short break. You don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.